place was full of people. And I just thought, you know, what an amazing experience that all these people have one shared passion, and that's automobiles. And that's what it's all about here.
I'm Ray Evernham. I'll be your tour guide. I'm going to do the best I can, but I've known many of these people for a long time, so wherever this goes, I'm going to do the best I can to control it. And hopefully we'll have some time for everybody to ask some questions and have some fun. But this is an honor for me to be up here. This group is the Hall of Fame legendary nominees or honorees at the Amelia Concours. So 30 years ago, 1995, the best-selling car in the world was the Ford Taurus. The Yankees won the World Series. Jacques Villeneuve won the Indy 500, and the internet was introduced. You could buy the cheapest car in the U.S., a Geo Metro, for $69.95. Jeff Gordon and Ray Evernham won the NASCAR championship in the newly introduced Chevrolet Monte. The most significant thing that happened for many of us in this room was a plan was put in place to have the Concours at the Ritz-Carlton on Amelia Island. And the Amelia's come a long way in 30 years. I can't think of a better group of people to talk about it than this group. I'll introduce them and then we'll start the show. But the first up, as he should be, the mastermind and the father of Amelia Island, a walking, talking encyclopedia of automotive history, my dear friend and mentor, Bill Warner. This man, many people, including me, call America's greatest road racer. 5-time Daytona Rolex 24 winner, 3-time Le Mans 24-hour winner, 2-time Sebring 12-hour winner, and the 1998 Amelia Island honoree, Hurley Haywood. That's like 6 straight days of racing, right? You know that, like I was adding up all that stuff, and you circumvented the globe more than once in just all of your road racing. Pretty impressive. In world sports car, this gentleman was a true master of endurance racing. Built his legacy driving for legendary teams behind the wheel of some of the most iconic cars this sport has ever seen, and on the toughest tracks on the planet. In a time that the only limit to top speed was how much you were willing to hold your right foot down. Please welcome 5-time 24-hour Le Mans winner, 2007 honoree, Derek Bell. Our next honoree, another incredible race driver. Racked up wins, driven everything from NASCAR, Indy cars, Formula One, sports cars, Trans Am, and then retired from full-time driving, quickly became one of the most respected color commentators in motorsports, and we are working him very hard this week because he's been doing a lot with us. 2009 Amelia honoree, Mr. David Hobbs. For 2011, the Amelia team honored one of the most popular and tenacious IndyCar drivers. He's a 3-time CART IndyCar champion, winner of the Indy 500 as a driver, much success as a team owner. Please welcome the boss at Rahal, Letterman Lanigan, 2001 Amelia honoree, Bobby Rahal. The first female to be named Indy 500 Rookie of the Year, a race she's competed in 7 times, 2 class victories in the 24 Hours Daytona, as well as a win in the 12 Hours of Sebring, set a closed course speed record for women, 227.32 miles per hour in a Ford Thunderbird. Please welcome 2021 honoree, Lyn St. Well, Bill, I got to kick it off to you. This is from, how did it start?
Well, I was in my office one day, and I was in the filtration business, and had done work for Road and Track magazine, and I got a call from Patty Hendricks here at the Ritz-Carlton, and they wanted to have a Concours d'Elegance here, similar to what they have on the West Coast at that other show.
Sorry, nameless.
Yeah, so we shall be named nameless. And I hadn't given it much thought. My degree was in electrical engineering. I didn't know anything about putting on a show. I had confidence we could, and I defined confidence as something you have and you don't truly understand the situation. So the first year was kind of a practice year. It was almost a day like this. We had no CMs, bugs, but what I decided at the time is we need a drawing card, and Mercedes-Benz was our sponsor, and they had a contract with Sterling Moss. So I said, can you get me Sterling? We got Sterling, and it started in the second year. I thought, we should really build a show around our honoree and bring the cars of their career in, as many of them as we could find. And that's how it grew.
What were the criteria that you used there? Because when you look at the list of the people that have, as I said, been an honoree here, it is the who's who of racing motorsports.
Well, I was very lucky because in working with Road and Track Magazine, I worked with my pal David Hobbs since, 1969 at Sebring, and I knew Bobby Rahal, and I covered the runoffs, and all the people in Hurley, and I since 68 here in Jacksonville. So it was kind of easy to put it all together because once I got going with it with Moss, and then we had Phil Hill, who I knew through Road and Track Magazine, I collected connections there. And then I knew Carol Shelby, and then we built a reputation, I guess you could say.
Not me.
Well, I said you. I said ever since 1968, you were third, yeah. And once we started that theme, it carried on and made it easier.
And, you know, as it grew, what was the hardest thing to do first? What was the, you know, what we kid around about, hey, you know, you got to put a contour on, you got to raise money and get cars. You were able to do both pretty quickly.
I get calls every day. How do I put on a concourse? So I've got a 29-point list I send to people. And I say, you read it, call me back when you have any questions. I never get calls back. And that's good. That's good. The first challenge we had the first years are community hospice was our charity, and they had a group of young people who worked with them, and they were supposed to show up and didn't. So that was my first challenge. I think I had maybe 20 volunteers when I was expecting 100. I learned a lesson on that. I built my own team of people I knew through clubs in town that supported us for 30 years. We had people very, very dedicated. They wanted to do this class, they wanted this job. They got very good at it. And you would have a briefing twice, 2 weeks out, twice for all volunteers, to make sure they understood what we wanted, and to make sure that we're the host. We're hosting these people who are coming. We want the volunteers to have a warm relationship with everybody that came, and it was a whole family operation. My wife Jane's out here, used to run registration. My son helped on the field pulling cars. Our daughters ran the charitable portion of it. So people knew it was a family operation. Mark Hyman used to say he came here because he could see Jane out at 5 o'clock in the morning, waving a flag at the top of the hill, getting cars on the field. So it was a family deal.
And at charity, you mentioned the charity. You know,
Everything.
Why is charity such a big part of what you do?
We started with community hospice. I'd lost my dad in hospice and taken care of him. And we have a granddaughter who was born spina bifida after we started, so we moved over to spina bifida. Then I was in the Air Force Reserve at that time, so we gave money to the Navy and the Marine Corps. We wanted to show that the Air Force was just as kind as any other force out there. Navy, Marine Corps, really fun. And the last one we did was the Shop with Cops program for underprivileged children. So all proceeds went to that. We carried over some money for the next year as our operation cost, but a lot of people didn't understand. We had 9 people working around the clock, 24 hours a day. As soon as the show was over, we were on to the next one. And Chuck Dressing, who used to write for Brock Yates, would give me a book. And in that book were 5 pages, and all those pages were what were significant things that happened in the automobile industry or in racing by year. So when 1 year was over, we were on to the next year. We knew what the program was going to be. And for the most part, we knew who our honoree was going to be. But we ran it like a business. But it was still a family operation.
Hurley, you know, since you were one of the early honorees and you've watched this thing grow, and you're a very humble guy when it comes to the things that you did, what did that mean to you when Bill asked you to be the honoree after seeing the names like Hobbs?
You know, I've been, from day one, Bill called me and said, we're going to be doing a concourse and we'd like you to be one of the judges. So I've been a judge here for 30 years. And that's a true honor for me to be in that position. Bill Warner is a type of person that he could call up any collector in the world and say, we need your car at our concourse, and that person would say, absolutely, I want to take my car. So Bill ran a quality program. I've watched this grow from a relatively small concourse to what it is today. And I'm so happy that the Haggerty Group has taken the lessons from Bill, and I think the representative of that, our relationship has been, this weekend has been one of the best concourses that I've ever been to. So I think the Haggerty group needs a big applause, and I think that applause comes from the experience that they've had with Bill. So it's wonderful to see the progress that they've made, and I'm just honored to be still around to do it.
And feel free to jump in, but I want to throw this out to Mr. Hobbs, because we have yes, you sir. Yeah, we have a good relationship. But I wanted to know, like, you and Derek Bell raced so much together and whatever, and he beat you by 2 years as becoming an honoree. How did you feel about that?
Oh, pissed off as usual. The first time I came, it was 2007 when Derek was the honoree, and the Rolls Royce was one of your sponsors. They had a big party at the end there where all the art shows were this year. And as I walked in, Bill said, by the way, he said, Brian is 70 today. And he said, would you say a few words about it? So I did. And it's Brian's birthday today, and suddenly he's 88. And it just doesn't seem any time at all since I was here talking about his 70th birthday. And I nearly put the whole concourse under when I was inducted in 2009, because his main sponsor was Mercedes-Benz. And Bob Varty was doing a Q&A with me, and I got onto my German accent thing.
And the salute.
Bill said, thanks very much for just ruining all our sponsorship.
Actually, Bobby Unser was working.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The really funny thing was that my wife was here, Margaret was here with me. As we got into the elevator to go to our room, the president of Mercedes-Benz North America, who was an Englishman at the time, got in the elevator with his wife as well. Well, by then we'd had the Honda dealership in Milwaukee for about 10 or 15 years. As this guy got in the elevator and pressed the button, he looked at me and I looked at him, and I said, I suppose a Mercedes-Benz sponsors no dealerships out of the question, is it? Which it was. Completely.
No, you weren't the worst. Bobby Unser was the worst.
What did he do?
Well, Mercedes-Benz was a major sponsor. They were sitting over here in the front table, and Bobby gets up. I'm not going through the whole thing because it was just terrible. He gets up, he says, you know, I used to race for Audi. The Mercedes people looked down at me like this. Everything's cool. I learned one thing when I raced for Audi. I learned that Germans hate Americans. Well, there goes one sponsor. And then it went downhill from there, but I'm not going to take it.
Something about World War II.
I was going to say, buddy, you do a lot of
I
work.
was in the audience for that. You got that typical Bobby Unser, though, because all you had to do with Bobby is light the fuse and stand back. Off he went.
Oh yeah, Evie Gurney told me the week before, she says, you know, I see you got Bobby. I said, yeah. Says, how you going to control him? I said, hey man, I used to be the public affairs officer for the Air National Guard. We dealt with nuclear explosions, you know, I had to address that. Next morning I called Evie and said, Evie, she says, I told you.
Derek, and for you, with everything that you've done to come here, you know, I'm sure you are one of the people who have not caused any trouble or any heartache to Bill.
I just don't mention the war or anything like that. And, you know, I mean, we're all very lucky to be here at all with everything going on at the moment. So I just love coming here from obviously Bill's time and now with the Haggerty influence, and I think it's got a great future. It's great to have the drivers here. It'd be nice to have a few more actually, but that was what I think was stronger before a little bit with Bill, because I think it's obviously the changeover, getting the drivers known to come. But you know, there's such a bunch, and of course we'd have a panel which might have been, well, do you remember it because you used to run them, where you had a NASCAR group, And of course, the banter going on was hilarious. And then you'd have a sports car group, and Bill was trying to control that, which was always very difficult. And it was just fabulous. And I know the audience used to love all those barrackings and the bantering that went on. It was great. But as a driver to come here, it's just fabulous, because you've seen all the cars like yesterday. Looking at that beautiful Lotus. Jimmy Clark's car, and you think of the history of that there was for us. That was sort of my history. Obviously there were older cars which were far more exciting in so many ways, but didn't mean as much to us sort of, I would say, modern drivers. That's a bit ridiculous really, but talking back to 1970 or 67. But I mean, I raced against that car that you saw, the Lotus, yesterday in my first drive for Ferrari in the Italian Grand Prix. In 68, and I know that was a year later, but it was basically that car, the Lotus 49. And it was just amazing when you look back at that period, and which all, by having this event, brings all the fact of what the racing cars were like then. I mean, in the Ferrari, for example, and the Lotus was the same, and David and I were talking about it, I mean, we sat in a 20-gallon tank of fuel, and then we had 10 gallons down either side of our legs, aluminium pipe. I mean, very generously, they were aluminium tanks. And then in the sort of slightly longer Grand Prix, you had a lap tank over the top in the front, between the steering wheel and the foot pedals. And that's what we sat. I mean, there was none of those beautiful packaging stuff you had in tanks to stop it draining through. If you hit something, it just shot out of the tank and caught a light, and you died. And it happened a lot. So, we lived through that. But and of course, most of you are going, well, you must have been bloody crazy. But in reality, that was what life was like then. And if you didn't do it, there was a dozen people, like there still are today, that would jump in and take the chance, because it's great to drive those sort of cars. But
these days drivers don't advance hardly at all, do they? Get into a Formula 1 car, they're there for 20 years.
That's right, yeah.
In the old days, you just had to wait a few weeks, and you rang up when he was killed, and you rang up the others. I'm ready, I'm ready. What do you think? I mean, these tanks he's talking about were all connected by bits of plastic pipe with a screw sort of clip on it, and that was it. So,
you feel it dripping on your leg, and you go, that is not a good sign. The water up there, it has to be petrol. And you're sitting here I remember putting your head in the car and go, good God, it reeks of fuel. And it was just dripping out, and you go, what am I doing in this thing? But we did it because if I didn't do it, Hobbs would have jumped in. Big Rahal. Even Hurley might have had to go eventually and sort of said, I'll jump in. I don't know. But it was.
I've always admired the intelligence and things of you guys, and you're sitting here telling me that
I did jump in with lack of intelligence.
But there was a conversation that somebody said to you, hey, look, we're going to build about an 80-gallon fuel tank. You're going to sit in the middle of it, and we're going to hit a giant motor on the back of it, and you went, yeah!
How fast? Yeah.
And Bobby, different time for you, but Indy cars, and then again, I want to get back to the Amelia stuff, but
I remember.
And then not here after your retirement.
Well, just going back to what Derek and David were mentioning. 82 marks, and that was my rookie year at Indy, and actually Hurley was racing, we were racing against each other, same car. And at Indy, that was still the old garages, and the roadway between the garages was canted, so that you could wash your car out there, and the water or gas or oil or whatever would end up in the drain. But in those days, you couldn't refuel in the pits. They'd have to drag you back to the fuel dump to get, and you'd sit in the car, and as they go over these canted roadways, you went over there diagonally, the 82 March, which you thought was the next best thing. It was great. Couldn't wait to drive it. But I could always feel the seatbelts move on my hips, the seatbelt mounts. So the car was just, even at that, going like 2 miles an hour. It was flexing like crazy, and that car wasn't one that you wanted to have an accident in. But you were still there, because that was your ticket. And fortunately they got better over time and are pretty darn safe these days, thanks to various other things, safer walls and what have you, carbon fiber construction, you name it. But No, and I got invited, and of course I'd come to the show numerous times prior to my being honored, and had gotten to know Bill. Just such a, I mean, I don't know, I think somebody mentioned earlier, but he never said no to Bill. I mean, he was just the nicest guy in the world, and or Jane was even nicer, and
A lot.
you know, so I came here. I felt so bad for Bill because Jim Hall was the honoree.
2003.
Oh my God! And of course, he had all the chaparrals, you know, out on the lawn. Well, the day of the show, it rained and rained and rained, and we brought him in here.
Put the chaparrals in the
chaparral.
Cranked them up.
Yeah, and then you got all these people walking through the Ritz-Carlton, you know, I mean, everybody tracking mud in and the whole thing, but it was still an amazing experience, and, you know, I just felt so bad for him, because, God, I can't imagine what the cleaning bill was the next day.
The guy didn't care. The manager was going to do another job the next day. We could do anything in the ballroom.
You left.
Well, we cranked the cars up, the grand sports, the fire marshal probably had a heart attack.
Yeah. But anyway, you know, so when Bill asked if, you know, I would accept being the honoree in 2011, it was a tremendous honor. You know, you look at the names associated that were honored prior to my coming in, and you know, it just you know, phenomenal, and just really one of the highlights of my life, let alone my career, and pretty much why I keep coming back. I just think this event is a fabulous. You know, I've been to another one on the West Coast, and it's very nice. You know, let's face it, but the ambiance here, the ease of getting around, the southern hospitality, I think is pretty much what separates it. And so coming back here, I was yesterday. It was probably early, about, I don't know, 9 o'clock, and I was showing a car here, and I was just, and the place was full of people, and I just thought, you know, what an amazing experience that all these people have one shared passion, and that's automobiles, and that's what it's all about here. And so yeah, it was a thrill for me to be honored. It's a thrill for me to come back every year to support it. You know, I think Haggerty, as Hurley says, really taking it now and building upon it, and it's really a testament to Bill and Jane and their family and all the people that continue to volunteer to make this such a great event. And so yeah, couldn't be, I can't imagine a better place to be, you know, this time of the year.
Lyn, for you, I remember when Bill called me, and I thought, that is fantastic.
You actually approved that?
Well, he didn't really ask my opinion. He was just telling me, get ready, get your panels ready. This is what's happening, and I had to keep it secret. But it was really great to hear, you know, especially following your career with so many firsts and everything that you're trying to do with ladies in motorsport right now. So tell us a little bit about how that felt to you personally, and where you felt like it took women in motorsports to the next level.
Well, I'm still shaking, actually, sitting here. I'm serious. These are my heroes. I mean, I had come to this. I don't feel I really belong, to be honest. Because these guys, I watched them race. I wanted to be like them. But Bill's such a good guy. You know, he puts you. Everybody's equal. You know what I mean? He doesn't make anybody feel super duper less than. You know, he just makes everybody feel so wonderful. And I have been to a few concours when I was working with the RPM Foundation, but I'm not that much of a concours kind of car person. But I love them. I mean, but when I came to this, and then I saw these race cars, and then of course the honorees that were there. I mean, this is where we feel at home as racers. You know, when you come to this concours. And because of the way Bill and Jane and the whole organization treats you, and it's wonderful to see that Haggerty is carrying it on. But I still, when Bill called me, it was like in July. I remember I was outside Arizona in July, and answered the phone, and Bill said, "Hey, I got a deal for you." I'm like, "Oh, cool! I'm always up for a deal. You know, what's up?" we've decided that, you know, you're going to be our honoree, we're inviting you to be our honoree next year at Amelia. And I just went totally dead silent. I mean, because this can't be. I mean, this just can't be, because it just can't be. And so, there was long silence, and I'm not usually very silent. And Bill said, does that mean you don't want to do it? And I'm like, no, I just can't believe it. I mean, then I started like trying to challenge him that, you know, you sure? And, you know, these are heroes, and I just couldn't believe it. So anyway, I did. It was the most wonderful thing when I saw my cars on the lawn. I mean, and I would hear all these people when I would just hang out there, and they were, oh, I didn't know she drove that. I didn't know she drove that. So I mean, it was kind of like people knew me about Indy, or they maybe knew me from sports cars. But they didn't know the depth and the breadth. And then the only thing Bill said was that, he said, the only car I can't get is the Pinto. I said, if you get that Pinto, I am going to kill you. But it was, you know, to me, and I tell Bill this every time, not every time I see him, but I tell him often, it changed my life. It seriously, you know, it literally right after that is when COVID hit, you know, and the whole world changed. But I wasn't inducted into Hall of Fames and stuff like that before that. I mean, so this to me was my Hall of Fame. I mean, this was the most extraordinary honor, and to honor my body of work, you know, in racing. And Bill had actually had I hosted a seminar for women in racing before that a number of years. So he's always had that sort of openness to do things, you know, to challenge and to do things. And after that's happened, I mean, I've been inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame. I mean, it's like the world all of a sudden remembered Lyn St. James, because, you know, in 2021, my last Indy 500 was 2000, so it was 20 plus years, you know, that I had actually raced, and so, professionally anyway. And so it was a life-changing moment, and I still sit here saying to myself, why am I sitting here, you know? I mean, these are icons. These are people that, they're just bigger than life. I'm just Lyn, you know, so anyway. And I am pleased that this is hopefully a kind of another opportunity for the industry. I'll put my other hat on here. For the industry to recognize that women belong in, you know, we belong in the sport, and more of them are here. I know Sabra Coke's here, who's a gal I worked with for a long time, and now she's racing for Porsche, and I know is going to do some great things. And there's a lot of gals out there doing great things, industry-wise, in the seat, engineering, everything. So, thank you for.
It always amazes me exactly how humble so many of these legends are when they say, well, I don't really belong, or I'm not a legend, you know. And I don't know that sometimes they understand, like, look, there's 4 billion people on the planet, and the group of what they've done for those of us who sit out there, you guys and girls amaze us. So, I'm going to throw this out to Bobby, because, you know, Bobby and I get along really well because we're both very detailed, I think, when it comes to things, and focused, and I'd like everybody to jump in, but one of the things that amazed me, Bobby, is how much goes on behind the scenes to put on this show. It's like going to a Broadway play, right? You see the play, but you don't see the writers, you don't see the rehearsals, you don't see the musicians, you don't see the makeup people and the costumes, and, you know, were you impressed by that, Bobby?
Oh, for sure. I mean, because it never seems to be issues. You know, everything seems to work. Even the other day, you know, moving it to Saturday rather than today, you know, obviously that causes a lot of after effects, but it seemed to me that it was handled extremely well. And yesterday, if you didn't know it was Sunday, you know, you would have thought it was, with the way the show, you know, everything was perfect. And thankfully, everybody kind of goes with the flow and understands. But you know, it's like anything. You know, like you say, it's the tip of the iceberg. Which, you know, the finished product is just at 10% maybe, and it's everything beyond below that water level that is what really makes it all happen. And yeah, I think as Bill had mentioned, you know, when people ask about putting on their own Concorde, he gives them the 29 points, it probably highlights just that 90%, at which point it probably dissuades anybody with any common sense that this is something they should do.
Not meant to, but it does.
So, and God knows that, Bill would, because it was such a family. I mean, I remember the first time I came here, the people that you dealt with, registered, not just Jane, but I can't remember the lady's name, but just so nice. And, I mean, great communication, great organization, everybody was in sync, and that just doesn't happen. That takes a real commitment and a real sense of team, by his people, and and which is obviously why it continued to grow and get better and better over time. And again, easy to see the finished product, but very difficult to see everything that it takes.
Appreciate it, Bobby. I attribute the organization here to two things. My time at the Citadel, which taught me discipline, and my time in the Air Force, which taught me logistics. And when people put on a Concord, they say, we want to do a Concord Sandusky. Well, okay, I'll send you this list. They said, we got a great golf course. You don't have to have a great golf course. The logistics, you got to park trucks, you got to put parking where it's going to be. You got to make it user-friendly. You got to have a team. We had 750 volunteers. We had to train every one of them, and they did a great job. And the most important thing we told them is everybody who's coming is our guest. We treat them as a guest.
I've been sitting up here thinking about how you run a concourse, and it parallels very closely to running a racing team. And we as the drivers usually get all the adulation when we're successful and get into victory lane. But because we get to victory lane, it's because of the efforts of the team that we're driving for. And everybody on that team is equal, from the driver all the way down to the lowest mechanic. And that's what makes a very successful concourse is, yes, you have the cars and the stars behind the cars, but what makes it all work is the cooperation of the entire organization behind the concourse. And people forget that. We're the sort of, and the cars are the focus, but all the volunteers, all the judges, all the people that are behind the concourse are the ones that really should be getting the credit, not us. So it's pretty unique, and Bill's training both on the military side and from the racing side sort of all get together and all makes the organization work. So I think that's pretty special.
Well, you've all been really nice to Bill. But I want to add,
I'd love to say something bad about Bill, but there's nothing to say. What can I say?
you never got yelled at by Bill?
Not to me.
Is that only be me?
Not to me.
I don't know.
I don't know.
When one of the neatest things that I think here is you talk about camaraderie and getting to meet people, and Derek, David, everybody jump in, but with so many stars that you see here, is there somebody that you always wanted to meet, that you were able to meet and spend some time with and now friends with here because of the Amelia?
First year, I called Don Garlitz. Now, he's usually busy the week before because of the Gator Nationals. And I said, we're going to have a dinner honoring Sterling Moss. Sterling Moss! Always wanted to meet Sterling Moss, And Don Garlitz came up, and he had raced in the UK. And he met Sterling for the first year, and it was like they were in a room by themselves. There were hundreds of people around him, but Don Garlitz and Sterling Moss hit it off. And the other one was Don the Snake Prudhomme. Same thing. In bringing a wide variety of racers together, many of them race at different venues. They never meet each other, but they know of each other. They know the successes. And we gave them an opportunity here to meet their heroes. We don't think about it. These heroes here have heroes too. And to have them all at one spot was good. I'd like to tell one story, because one of the big challenges we had. One year we did the three greats. Nothing against these guys, but the three greats. We had Richard Petty, Don Garlett and Sterling Moss, world's greatest road racer, world's greatest drag racer, world's greatest oval track.
And a translator.
Yeah.
And a translator.
Translator. So they were going to be on a Friday seminar. On Sunday, Jane and I get a call from Susie Moss. We've been promoting this up to 3 graders. Sterling fell down the elevator shaft and broke both ankles. Couldn't come. Sunday, supposed to be there Thursday. I hang up the phone, Jane says, what's wrong? I said, Sterling fell down the elevator shaft, broke both ankles. All right, but broke both, I can't be here. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I said, I've been booking this as the 3 greats. I got to find another great, but I got to call him and say he didn't make the first cut. I said, how am I going to handle this? You know, it's Sunday afternoon. I need it there Thursday, so I called Carol Shelby up. I said, Shell, I got a problem here. I said, what's the problem? He says, well, we're going to have Richard Petty and Don Garlett and Sterling Moss on a panel next week. And Sterling fell down the elevator shaft. Broke his ankle. Is he all right? I said, yeah. He didn't hit his head. No, he didn't hit his head. When do you want me? Thursday. Thursday! That's 4 days away. I said, yeah. I'll call you in an hour. So Sunday afternoon, I'm waiting. Phone rings. Bill Shelby. Yeah. I'll be there, but I don't fly commercial. I said, okay. I want a plane. No problem. I didn't know how I was going to pay for a plane. But I couldn't say no. So I hung up, I called Rob Moran at Mercedes-Benz, and he gave me 10 grand. I called Rob Myers at RM, he gave me 10 grand. I had 20 grand, get him a plane. Turboprop, couldn't get a jet.
We spent 2 days getting here.
I didn't tell him until I got on the plane. I think it took 3 stops to get over here. He gets off the plane and says, well, I'm glad to be here, but don't ever send a turboprop.
But, you know, when you talk about why was that racing contingent so important? This Concours really has been built with the racing honoree unlike any other.
I wanted to spend time with my heroes. And, you know, and I thought everybody should. You go to the Daytona 500 or some of these other races, other than the Gator Nationals, which is pretty good, the public doesn't have access. They can't meet their friends. They can't shake the hands of David Hobbs. They can't shake the hands of Derek Bell and Hurley Haywood.
Can't do it here either.
Huh?
Can't do it here either.
No, I'm going to go down that road. They can shake your hand anytime, but the whole thing was to celebrate their careers. You know, your career is over. In a lot of cases, like my career, when it's over, what do? You know, you gotta celebrate these people because they put their life on the line every time. And to me, they're my heroes.
And, you know, and again, please jump in and Derek had been quiet down there, but I remember.
It's a long way down here.
There's a line.
The trouble is they're all talking to you because you're there, so I can't hear what's being said. Really.
Oh.
Don't worry, it's a very pleasant crowd down here. Even Hobbs has become friendly.
Talk to me about what it felt like to walk out and see the cars that you had driven. You know, to me, you know, it's a 962 for me. You know, when I picture you, you know, it's the 962, but to see your driving history right there in front of you.
Well, obviously it's remarkable, and generally when you get there, there's people around it that find it remarkable as well. And it was thanks to Porsche. Obviously, they always produce cars for people to win races, and I was lucky to get into the team in 1971. And when I think about it, and it was just fantastic to have that relationship with them, and we talked about the confidence you get with the driver and the team manager and the crew chief and stuff. And it was the same with Porsche, and so then they just call upon you when they come. I mean, in effect, I drove for a Porsche from 1971 right through to 2009. But I mean, not as a factory driver all the time, but whenever they went factory, I'd bring in the team. And it was just fantastic to have people like that trusting you with their machinery. And the same with all the guys in the team, you know, how they just loved their group of guys who they knew they could rely on. And they made us famous, really. It was thanks to Porsche, nothing else, really. I mean, we couldn't really go wrong in them. I mean, even Hobbs could do well in a Porsche.
David?
that one of Amelia Island's biggest attractions, which is what obviously Bill started with, is having the drivers here. None of the other concours do that, like Pebble Beach. It's all cars. I mean, as somebody said earlier, we're all here because of the automobiles. That's why everybody comes. But I think that driver introduction they have a driver every year, and some of the drivers come back every year. I think it marks this concours out completely from all the others. You know, if you go to Villa d'Este in Italy, they don't give a tinker's cuss about the drivers. It's all about the cars and who's who. If there's a few film stars there, that's fine. But the thing about this one is it has that racing background, and obviously Haggerty continuing the trend with Elio here last night and yesterday. So I think it marks this one out. Apart from else, of course, being in spring, early spring down in Florida, people flock down from the north and people come over from Europe because this is a great time of the year to be in Florida. So I think all in all it has a great show. And all those racing cars that are here as well, which you don't often see, very often don't see in a lot of other concours. It's all the really elegant stuff, which is pretty mind-blowing when you walk around those avenues. Yesterday with the Duesenbergs, the Delahaye's, the Rolls-Royce, I mean, they are just so mind-blowing, those cars. But it is nice to see some of the racing cars here as well, and it does remind one, I learned that Lotus yesterday, and I mean, when I was about 20, I was given my right arm to drive that car. And I looked at it yesterday, I thought, I wouldn't cross the bloody street, that thing. The roll bar's about like my little finger. At the end, it's pitched, and it's held onto the chassis with a screw that a kid would put in a Meccano set. I mean, this is the roll-over bar. And so things have changed a lot in cars.
One funny thing came out of that in doing a concours, you have to get a wide variety of cars and people. And there's one gentleman, I won't say his last name, named Jim, and he had a wonderful collection of classic cars. And I called him one day and I said, would you like to bring one of your cars down? And I usually ask for a particular car when I call him, but I called him. He says, well, I like you, but I don't like your show. So let's talk about it. What don't you like? You got 2 race cars. You should be. Now this gentleman, Jim, founded Long John Silver's and Checkers. Okay? A lot of money, a lot of restaurants. And he says, you should be more like Pebble Beach. I said, Jim, me being like Pebble Beach would be like you putting golden arches in front of your restaurants. There was a silence on the end of the phone, and he said, okay, I get it. And that was over.
So did he not?
Yeah. Didn't win.
David, you said film stars, but we've got racers who are film stars. I mean, you and Derek got to work with Steve McQueen, and you got to work with Lightning McQueen.
Actually, yes, and
I'm not, right?
Hobbs cap, David Hobbs cap in Cars too. Everybody says, "Oh, I bet it was fantastic, wasn't it?" It was the most boring. I mean, it was the weirdest thing. I'm thinking I'm going to meet all these stars, and you go to studios in North San Francisco, across the bay from San Francisco, and I'm giving the speech. I'm giving my script, which I had about 3 weeks before I read it, and changed a few words and stuff like that. And it's just me and John Lasseter in a sound studio, and you're standing in front of a microphone, and John Lasseter is sitting there in a seat. So I just read my various scripts, which was about 45 minutes, and he said, whoop, more emphasis on winning, or less emphasis on winning, or more emphasis on speed, less emphasis on whatever. He did that in about 45 minutes. He said, do you want to see around the establishment? So I walk around Pixar Studios, look at all the guys in their studios and their drawings, got in the cab and went home. That was it. So it wasn't very glamorous. My other big movie hit, of course, was with Chris Economaki with the guy that did the Coast to Coast stuff. God, what's he called? I can't remember the name of the film. Not Brock Yates.
Cannonball.
Yeah, Cannonball. And I did the when the winner goes across the line on the roof, the car's upside down, he slides across the road and wins the race.
Droger Ace.
Stroker race.
Stroker race.
For me, that's me, stroker, all right. Anyway, Chris Economac and I go down to Charlotte Motor Speedway, and the director is Hal Needham. And in the grandstand, or the press box, they had a plaque from a chair over there to a chair over there. And they said, and the guy is going to walk across this plaque, and you just watch the guy walk across the plaque. And that's going to be you watching the car cross the line. That's how we did it. Again, they were there for about 10 minutes. Watch this guy do that. Oh my God, there he's winning. Look at that, he's upside down in the room. He's okay, thanks very much. Off you go. He's a governor grant, go bugger off.
I had one speaking movie part.
You did?
Yeah, in Speed Merchants. I was photographing the race for Road and Track. I was up in the stands. Mario comes into victory lane. I went, Mario, Mario. That was my speaking part.
The trouble is he forgot the words.
I had to do it 3 times, yeah.
So, as an honoree, do you take a little time and get to walk around the field and appreciate things? And do you pick your favorite car? Has there been a car here that you're like, man, I want to take that home?
That one will do right there.
Yeah, that's the one.
That one will do. That's pretty nice.
Well, Bill's agreed that, you know, as a parting gift that everybody can take one.
Yeah, well, I drove that car 1,000 miles in the middle of Amelia with Paul Gould. And when I got to Italy, they forgot to tell me that it's right-hand drive with a crash box with a gas in the middle and a brake on the right and a clutch on the left, you know. That was 1,000 miles of constant thinking. You didn't get to enjoy it at all.
Bobby, Hurley, you guys are collectors. What have you seen that you just said, man, I would love to have that thing parked in my garage?
Oh man, a lot. None of which I can afford, unfortunately. But no, I mean, yeah, I'm a fan of cars ever since I was a little kid, and you know, I've been around a while now. So being, you know, a child of the '60s, I guess. You know, that's the era that I like the most. You know, I used to, you know, when I go to Watkins Glen or Sebring and watch the 917s and the 512 Ferraris and all that stuff as a teenager. I mean, didn't get much better than that, I didn't think. And so when I see cars like that, or you know, I have to say I might lose a few people on this, but I'm not a huge fan of the brass era, or you know, that's just something that doesn't kind of ring my bell necessarily. I mean, they're cool, but you know, the pre-war, you know, the Duesenbergs and Mercedes, and I mean, those things are spectacular. You know, they're just something else. And then
What you showed this weekend?
you know, I had a 904 Porsche this weekend, and of course and I actually watched that car, the car I own. I watched a very good driver named Bill Wiestoff, who actually works at the Revs Institute down in Naples. Anyway, I watched Bill race that car, Elkhart Lake, Road America in 1964 when it was brand new. And then to be able to now have that car, talk about coming full circle. You know, my dad raced Porsches in those days. In fact, Bill took a great photograph of my dad's car at Sebring one year for Road and Track. Just a spectacular photograph. But you know, I just like the variation, and I love the, you know, I love the, and I've said this to people, you know, in talks before, but you know, you look at a Porsche, you look at a Ferrari, you look at an Alfa Romeo or whatever, they represent really the vision of, in many cases, one person. You know, committees didn't necessarily design those cars, it was one guy, you know, or one person. And I just love that because it really sets the kind of the standard for an era, that you would have such differences and yet they were fairly equal in many respects. So I don't know, but yeah, I'd love to, you know, 917 Porsche or 512 Ferrari would be pretty cool.
Well, Hurley's got a 917, so you.
I know he does.
We've got a special guest this morning. You know, it is. No, it's not you, Justin. I'm sorry. But you are always a special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been told that our 2025 honoree, Elio Castroneves, is here and ready to walk out. So, Elio, I can't see you, but come on out. Good morning, everyone. It was beautiful weather, right? Woo! Wow, now, incredible. Only on Amelia Island, only at the Concours can you see a group of incredible stars like this. Ilya, congratulations.
Thank
You had
you.
a great time last night. Great dinner. How do you feel?
Oh, I feel a new man. No, it was absolutely, thank you again. It was absolutely great. I want to thank as well the Haggerty and entire team. I mean, to put this event together, it's my first experience, and to see all of it falling into a great place, it's incredible. So as I mentioned yesterday, for those that are not there last night, you know, I cannot do all these things alone. I have to have a great team, and it's the same thing with this amazing event. If you don't have a great team, you won't be able to succeed. So, super excited to be here again, and thank you for an amazing night.
And again, when you talk about Humboldt, when he came out and said, I feel, as they have, I feel like I don't belong here. You know, I can tell you, like I told you last night, 4 Indy wins, 3 Daytona, 24, all the things that you've done absolutely belong here with the rest of these people. So when you walked around the field, we were just talking about if you could take something home with you. Did you see anything that you want to take home with you?
Everything. I mean,
It's not like Bobby.
it's like Bobby, right? I remember Bobby, actually, my first Indy 500, the first things he told me, it was like, welcome to the club. I'm like, yeah, I like this guy. It was awesome just to have this welcome. But I'll be honest, I love the 918 Porsche, which for me is it's one of those incredible cars. Once I had one Porsche, I actually was always a big fan of Ferrari and Lamborghinis, right? But when I had a Porsche for the first time, I'm like, man, this car is amazing. You can drive every day, you know? So it was impressive. So yeah, 918 is one of my favorites too.
It's something I wanted to throw out. And again, guys, jump in, just like we were sitting around the table last night. Speaking of Hurley's 917, Hurley put an amazing bid out, or charity proposal out last night, where the incredible book all about remodeling. Hurley said, if you up this to $10,000, I will take you personally for a ride in my 917. And that was, you know, my wife's looking at me like, you spent enough money this weekend, you know. I should have stayed out of the auction. But then when they got to our charity that we were offering, you know, it was stalled in that $5,000-6,000 deal. So I said, if you go $10,000, I will give you a ride in Hurley's 917. What? So it didn't happen. But again, raised a lot of money for charity last night. Had a great time. What is it about the car world that seems to be able to put so many different social groups together? We're all different people. We come here, and all of a sudden, we're all just hanging out talking about cars. What is it, Lyn?
Well, I think part of it is it's independence, but it's also the sharing. You know, every vehicle has a personality, and we all have different personalities. And so I think that is where maybe the connection is or isn't. With, you know, you find your friends, the people you like that you like better than others, but then you have that same, what's the personality of the car that, you know, that you like some better than others. I mean, and I think it's also, for me, and I think for maybe all of us, is the appreciation of excellence, and whether it's excellence in the preparation of the car or the history of the car, or just something that you've never seen before, but there's this sort of, it's a level of excellence. It's how I feel when I go to racing. I mean, I love to see winners, but I love to understand why they're winning and to see the excellence of this car versus this car. I mean, they both could be even the same brand, the same model, but there's one that's prepared better than the other by the team, and that's usually the one that wins. But I just feel that that level of excellence is across the board, and that they all have personalities. And we all have different personalities and relate to different people and different vehicles. And there's such a huge variety out there. You know, sometimes we live in the tunnel of, you know, what we love and what we care about, and then you come here and now you're able to kind of broaden your scope a little bit about what you appreciate.
Hurley, Bobby, David and Derek, I believe Derek as well, you guys all worked as judges at one time or another, done some things here, and that's the coolest way to get to see most of the cars, right? You know, we're not really working. Hurley, you know, you've probably been doing this longer than the rest of us, but how have you seen that change over the 30 years?
I think I agree with Lyn. I think when you look at a car, whether it's 100 years old or whether it's a brand new car, you can really see the excellence and the thought that went into designing that car. The cars that are 100 years old have their own place in history, and when you see the development over the years to a present car, that's what's really cool, to be able to see that. And I'm just lucky that I'm able to see all of those cars. In our collection at Brumos, we have cars from the early 1900s all the way to the current cars. And I see those all the time. So, I appreciate all those cars. And I've driven some of those cars, like the Millers. When you talk about a scary car to drive, that Miller, you got the gearbox right between your legs. You've got, you know, a fuel cell that has no bladder in it. You've got a big steering wheel. You know, you really got to eat your Wheaties in the morning to turn that steering wheel. So, but that car really was the thing, the input that designers used as they went forward. And so it's cool to be able to see that.
I think one of the most amazing things about automobiles is they have always had that tremendous fascination for everybody. You know, the American hot rods, you know, all the drag racing they used to do out in Los Angeles and everywhere. So the kids here would love cars when they were little kids. But I can't believe how cars have evolved over the years. Look at the 911, for instance, from when it first came out, basically in 1954 or whatever it is today. And the really weird thing about cars now is how unbelievably reliable they are. I mean, you look at the 24-hour, which, you know, he lives one 3 times, Derek's one 77 times, I think, at the last count. In the old days, everybody broke. You know, the main thing is you're in the car, you're on the pole, obviously your intention is to win, but your real main intention used to be to finish. Now you just know it's going to keep going. You know, it goes to Le Mans, you go to Daytona, the flag drops. It's absolutely flat out all the way. Have 3 drivers instead of 2, sometimes 4 drivers, and every one of them drives absolutely balls out the whole time, and they rarely break. The street cars are the same. I mean, they go forever. You know, it used to be you have to oil change every 1,000 miles, every 2,000 miles. Now it's, you know, it's a year or 10,000 miles for the oil change.
Well, that's because they've I was almost going to plug my motor oil sponsor, but I wouldn't.
But I might add, I think what's great about the Concours, not just this one, but maybe anyone you go to, is every car has a story. And you go up there and the person who owns that car or is with that car really can't wait to tell its story to you, to share it. You know, like last year I had a Porsche 911S 67, and next to me was a fellow with I think it was a 70 or 71 911, and he was telling me I think he was from, I want to say West Virginia or somewhere like that, but he'd sworn that he got drafted, went to Vietnam, swore that if he got back, he was going to buy a 911, gets back, buys a 911, and that car was the car.
Wow.
And he'd owned it since the day, you know, like 2 days after he got back from Vietnam. And those are the stories that, you know, I mean, the owners, what have you, they can't wait to share that with you because they think that, and they believe that that's what makes it special to them. And I think when you listen to the stories, whatever it might be, race car, street car, whatever, that's what really, it turns that inanimate object into a live kind of being. And so I think that's what's really cool about these kinds of events.
I think the automobiles cover all economic, broad economic family. And it is a family. You know, you can go from the sublime to the ridiculous. You know, you can go from a guy who personally restored his 64 Pontiac GTO all the way up to Rob Walton with before GT 1075. But that enthusiasm of the people is uniform.
Enthusiasm, passion, and you know, and I know that we're talking about Amelia, but when we talk about enthusiasm and passion, you should have seen this guy last night. And I want to continue about the cars, but I've got to get him to tell you some of the stories that he told last night. Worked so hard, being prepared. Family helped you a lot to get here. You have the example that your parents and stuff set, and you know, great stories. But the funniest story I think you told last night was the little bit of a language barrier when you first came over, and one of your language coaches, two, Foyt and Bettenhausen.
Yeah, Bettenhausen was a little bit, I can't say what he used to tell me because I still get a little bit screwed up, but I thought it was a nickname when he was keep telling me, and I understood later on it was a bad word. Which I took it, you know, and but with AJ Foy, every time we are together it was something because he has a very heavy accent, right? For those that don't know, but he does sometimes talk a little bit low, and I still can't understand. And every word that comes, like some bitch, some bitch, some bitch. I'm like, okay, something's going on here. But he is, yeah, it's funny. Even when I did iRock, I remember Bill Elliott. He comes in talking to me. I was like, and every morning, you know, and saying something, and I couldn't understand. So next time I see him in the morning, I was like, hey Bill, great to see you. Hey, great to see you. Because I would not be able to be part of the conversation, but it was, yes. So language was still a little bit sometimes, but I go with the flow.
A fantastic career, and what does it mean to you as you look down? We talked about the honorees last night, the cars on the field, the dinners, the parties, everything that they do. What's your first impression now of Amelia?
Everything. First, when I came here, I saw the grass super green. Obviously, amazing cars, everything organized. I wasn't expecting to see most of the cars that I drove, which was really special. And everyone, super nice. Everybody wanted to take up, tell you stories. I was really happy to see the fans, by the way, talking about, especially the ones that I used to see when I was a kid, which makes me really old. But I don't care. I heard a lot of people saying, "You may fall in love with racing." Those things for me, believe it or not, it's the purpose why I'm racing. The purpose why I chose this career is to trying to get a little bit of my passion and share with the rest of the people.
Can I just tell a really quick story about Elliot? We met a long time ago before he had a ride in this country, in Daytona when you came to HBI, and sometimes I think people have wondered if this guy's like a little wind-up toy and he just sort of all of a sudden decides to be really positive and all that. He is so genuinely positive and passionate. We were in the hall, working out, and I was like, "Hey, how are you going?" And he goes, "Well, I don't have a ride," but he just was so positive, even though most racers, when they don't have a ride, they're like, "Poor me, I don't know if something's going to happen, I don't know if a deal will come together." They're usually, and in his moment of saying, "I don't have a deal right now," he was incredibly positive, and like he knew something was going to happen, and something obviously happened. So it's just this is the genuine guy, he's not this little wind-up toy, and I just want people to know that, so it's the real deal here.
Well, that wraps it up. Stay tuned for more footage from Amelia Island. Thanks for watching. And check out David Hobbs leaving in a Bentley like a proper English gentleman.